Back once again at Exile Brewing as we taste the Swarm beer for the first time here today. David Eickholt hanging out with us as we talk Hawkeyes on Locked On Hawkeyes.
Our Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Not in my basement right now. We're not in the studios at KXNO. No, we are out and about in downtown Des Moines at Exile Brewing, and myself, along with David Eickholt of 24/7 Sports, Hawkeye Insider, are getting our, well, not our first taste because we've been here for a while today. Our first taste, though, of the new Hawkeye Swarm beer. Well, first of all, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I was going to say, you and I have been talking for about, 4 years, maybe longer than that. This is the first time we've been able to meet in person, so it's a pleasure, obviously. Des Moines celebrity and legend Trent Condon having me on, so I appreciate you.
Always appreciate our conversations, and I'm always happy to get you on the podcast because those are usually some of our best viewed. Don't have to look at my ugly mug. People get to see the young hot stuff over here.
They get the face for radio and me, right? So we're all
that's
good.
Definitely me. That is definitely me. Well, we are very excited, first of all, for this beer because we both enjoy drinking beer. I told it
comes with the industry, though, right?
It kind of does. Yeah. Hand in hand, if you're in the sports world, you're probably going to enjoy yourself a cocktail from time to time or a beer. So I was talking to RJ Tersey, the owner here at Exile. When I first saw on both your message board and Tom Pakert's message board, Brad talking about you want to get a beer.
Yep.
And I think I know where this is going to go. It's going to be either an IPA that I'll hate.
Yep.
It'll be something way too hoppy. It'll be for the beer connoisseurs of the world. Or it just won't have that taste that you're used to with a domestic beer. That's what I drink.
Yeah.
I'm simple. I have light beer, and I'm good, and I'll chug a bunch of them before the Hawkeye game.
You drink football season beer all year,
right,
basically, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm that guy. That's what I do, and I'm happy with it. But coming here, hearing a few people that had tried it earlier in the week, and I heard from both a same person like me, a domestic drinker, and somebody that's a beer connoisseur, at least they think they are.
Exactly. Self-proclaimed, right?
And they both liked it. And then I came in with a little more optimism. This thing's delicious. It's so good. The drinkability.
Yeah.
You're talking not just tailgates, but to have in your fridge. And it's just one that you can pop open after a day of work. It is, but it's not too light either. It is as perfect of this style of beer as I think.
Have you had a Kona Big Wave?
I have, yes.
I think it's very similar to Kona Big Wave.
It's a good call. Yes.
I think just in terms of flavor profile, and Brad and them did a really smart thing, and that was light drinking. What could you shotgun at a tailgate, right?
Yeah.
It is. You could easily shotgun this. I think it's got like the flavor profile of something that's higher alcohol percentage than like a 4. I think it's a 4.1.
It's a 4.1, yeah. RJ said
it's a very more flavorful for a 4.1. Because usually you think it's like water. It's too like
dry. A PBR is like a 5.
Well, PBR is a lot of things. Let's put it that way.
But it's something where, on that high end, it's not a Michelob Ultra.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely not. No. And I would tell you, if I didn't think it was good, I would say it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not endorsing it. Obviously, I cover the team, everything else like that. And next step for Brad, and I think they're fully aware of it. I'm sure RJ's fully aware of it. This is what Beth needs to get on the phone. She's going to be the new AD August 1st. They got to find a way to make it tapped in Kinnick, because what do you think a bunch of drunk football fans are going to want to do? They're going to want to continue support, especially during a blowout.
Yes.
Imagine how many more people are going to go drink that Swarm beer.
Uh-huh.
So, no, I think it's a very smart move by Exile to be able to do it. I know some other businesses. I think Jordan Bohannon tweeted this. That was a really good point. You don't want to alienate the state in terms of, like Iowa State fans are now saying, we don't want to drink Exile, which is their right. That's completely fine. Iowa fans would do the same exact thing, in my opinion. But I think Exile, just given kind of how prominent it is in the state, Exile Ruthie is on my go-to.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I love Exile Ruthie.
It's funny when I've heard Cyclone fans say the same. I'm going to guess there are plenty of Cyclone fans that maybe one of their favorite beers, if not their favorite, is Ruthie. and they're just going to stop drinking it. I don't believe
That's
you.
not happening. It'll last a solid week or two, and then they'll kind of get over it, right?
Yeah, there'll be something
Well,
else.
the other thing that they need to think about too is like people in general. It's like if they're not drinking the Swarm beer, they're not contributing to the fund.
Right.
I mean, just don't drink it.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Just don't drink it. But it is interesting, and like you talk to RJ, I'm sure people are listen to RJ. RJ's a really nice dude. I think they've done a really, really good job. I got to give Brad Heinrichs a lot of credit for what he's done with the Swarm. I think it's very trailblazing of Iowa to try to get out ahead of this because they don't have a lot of those big donors. But you think about the gaming casino, the casino that sponsored them. You think about Exile, now they're doing the beer. I mean, for Gary Barta never giving Brad a call, Brad's done a really, really nice job of putting Iowa at least in a competitive situation.
So we've seen historically Iowa in terms of revenue is usually in that kind of 15 to 20 range.
Sure.
Collective-wise, it seems like they're close there, but the difference in the gap, yes, Ohio State and Texas and Michigan, they're kind of their own level. They're playing at their own field.
Well, Michigan got, they really weren't about it for a while. I know there's a lot
I'm just speaking in before NIL.
Oh, yeah,
just
sorry.
revenue
Yeah. Okay, yep.
back in the day, if you will.
I was thinking Ohio. Yeah, okay. That's why I was thinking Ohio State. When they came out, they're like, we need $11 million a year to stay relevant.
But I think there's a real chance for this collective to not get at maybe the top 5 level, but get into that top 15, top 12. That's a realistic goal.
I think so.
And these kind of ideas, Brad's a super sharp guy. Reading him on your message board at HawkeyeInsider.com, he is a guy that he comes up with ideas and not just has ideas, but then goes out and executes them.
It's very interesting because usually when you think he's very numbers oriented, I think he's an actuary science major, right? But again, not to put people too much in a bubble, but when you're a numbers person, you kind of sometimes lack creativity because your brain's just wired differently, right? I mean, very creative people don't have that numbers game with them either. Brad's done a really good job of being open and receptive enough to people who might have other ideas. I'm sure he's come up with more than a few of his own as well. And people need to remember, he's not getting paid. He runs his own company from Florida. Florida, right? I believe it's Florida.
Yep.
It's funny because he's TX Hawk. Yeah. But you got to give him a lot of credit for being just receptive enough and being self-aware enough to recognize his faults and still be able to go out and execute these things. And Iowa's also in a unique position itself because Iowa fans care about football and basketball and wrestling and women's basketball. How many other programs are really like that around the country? That
it's a huge rarity.
I would even throw in Iowa State. I don't know about the wrestling. I just don't know. I'm not a big wrestling guy. That's just me. But like they care about women's basketball a whole lot. They care about obviously Hilton is incredible.
Volleyball.
I know people don't want to hear it.
They support volleyball incredibly well.
Football. Like Iowa fans can make jokes about Iowa State. That's just the rivalry itself. But like but they care. But outside of that, it's like how many other programs around the country are really, really all about their athletic program as a whole versus what's trending, what's dominating.
I think it's our area because Nebraska's that way.
Yep.
But it's very difficult to find because Nebraska, now they've also had a ton of success. Baseball made a College World Series in semi-recent history.
Well, I was going to say the football will always be king there.
Right.
Iowa, I feel like, would still be Iowa, maybe even Iowa State. They'll still be just as supportive of football and basketball. Like, I've said this before. Nebraska basketball could win 5 national titles in a row in basketball. Mm-hmm. They will care about making a college football playoff 1,000 times more than winning at basketball, but they still show out for basketball. They still support it, but that shows how prominent football is. Now, football is king over at Nebraska more than anything else.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you're right. The way that we support as Iowans and Hawkeye fans and alumni and everything else, and if there's success, you see that build. And we've seen that now over the last decade of Rick Heller. As we're sitting here and watching the Iowa baseball game as we're recording here today, the success there, looking at the future of what Iowa baseball is going to be. They're basically rebuilding the grandstand ground up and redoing it in a 3,000-seat structure and actual seats in there. And hopefully a little bit better for when I'm coming over to call the state baseball tournament. All those things. But, those are the things that Iowa can support. And we see this too. You mentioned, though, and this has been a big hang-up, the gap between the Swarm and the athletic department, and specifically Gary Barta. Gary Barta is certainly more old school than most 59-year-olds, I think.
Yeah.
He's definitely a guy that probably skews older as the way that he looks at college athletics. We know what this is eventually leading to. The athletes are going to become employees of the university.
No question.
That's the end game. That's where we're going to get. And I wonder if Gary Barta looks at this and understands that, yes, right now, those iClub donations, those $100 checks, they really don't matter when
Yep.
you're making 60, 75, $80 million a year in TV revenue. But understanding when we get to that point, that check's going to come due relatively soon.
Absolutely.
And that money that is all of a sudden maybe for a lot of families or individuals is being allocated to the Swarm, we need to get that money back. And maybe when you think about it down the road, he knows what's coming, and maybe that's why he wasn't as quick to warm up to what the collective.
Gary was never the person that was going to be able to transition Iowa into what college athletics is becoming. And I said this on your radio show the other day. This next hire is going to be the most important hire in the history of Iowa athletics. And I don't think I'm speaking in hyperbole. You think about what Kirk's done, think about Lisa Bluter, even Fran. I think people are very overly critical of Fran.
Completely agree.
Fran maximizes what he has. Now, I agree. The Sweet 16 thing, that's completely valid. But everything else, he develops pros. It's a fun style of basketball to watch. They win 20-plus games. Like, they're in the upper echelon of the Big Ten every year, which is not as, I don't think people realize how tough that is to do. Mm-hmm. Brand's very consistent. And I always hate how people subscribe to the notion of a Sweet 16 or bust. Okay, then why are we playing the first 30 games at this point? You need to be able to enjoy the process. That's what college athletics is. But you can still be frustrated about it in the meantime. But as you mentioned with Gary, it should have been a fireable offense to not give Brad a call. That's why I think Beth Getz, we talked about this the other day, I think she is a perfect interim athletic director. It will not surprise me if she is the next Iowa athletic director. She's an All-American soccer player, and she's very, very well respected in college administration in a nutshell, more than what people I think know. And based on talking to people in and outside the program about her, she's loved at Iowa right now. And She was a sitting AD at Ball State, and she set up an NIL collective for them right when she was allowed to. And at Ball State, that's not exactly, that's
Muncie, Indiana, small MAC school. I believe one of the smallest.
To do it. Yep.
Yeah. But understand, this is going to be the future. One thing about that.
Yeah.
When we continue, we'll take a quick time out here on Locked On Hawkeyes. When we come back, the athletic director position, you are not alone. Many people believe this is fait accompli. It's going to be Getz's job.
Yeah.
And whatever process they go through is just a formality. I'm going to tell you why that does concern me a little bit. We'll do that when we come back here on Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. As we continue here in round 2 of the NBA Finals and get past game 2, FanDuel has you covered. All the props that you can imagine. Of course, the game lines, they always do a great job of putting those out there and giving you so many different options for you to make a bet on. Well, FanDuel right now has a no-sweat first bet up to $2,000, $2,500, excuse me. $2,500 in bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. You can get in all the great promotions that they have every single day. They got boosts. They got different options for you, all on a safe and secure app where you get paid instantly. No better place for you to bet on all the NBA playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Trent Condon back with you again here alongside David Eickholt of HawkeyeInsider.com on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. All right, David. So I mentioned this, and I believe that Getz is a great candidate.
Yeah.
One, I guess, thing that some people have said, well, she's already got the stench of Gary Barta on her. She's been there since what, September?
September 7th was her first start date.
Let's slow down, right, on that part of it. I don't think the stench can permeate that quickly in terms of a role like that. But the way that I break it down is this, and I mentioned this on our radio show. In college athletics, there are 32 big jobs. It's the SEC and it's the Big Ten.
No question.
Everybody else, it is a different level that you're playing at. That is what the structure is. And with only 32 of these jobs, I looked at the sitting ADs right now in the Big Ten. I found 6 of them that came from another Power 5 program. I don't want Iowa to minimize. Now, maybe the candidate won't be there, or maybe Getz proves to be the best candidate.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, absolutely she should get the job, no doubt about it. But I just don't want to see them pigeonhole themselves into the easy decision. And maybe probably the decision that with a wink and a nod was going to be there.
Sure.
Because this is not only at minimum one of the 32 jobs that people want. We talked about in terms of revenue, probably a top 15 job. And then you throw in the fact that the new AD is going to hire a new football coach, is going to hire a new men's basketball coach, women's basketball
Likely
coach,
a new women's
baseball coach, maybe even wrestling coach.
How old is Rick Heller?
Heller is 60.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
If you're looking at this job, and I think most ADs look at it kind of a 10-year, that's what your kind of your big window is.
Sure.
You're going to be hiring 4, maybe 5 of the most major sports at Iowa. There's going to be a ton of ADs. Minnesota, not a great collegiate job. You're working in a professional city. They do not have the support because of the professional aspect up there.
Yep.
They went out and got a very well-respected AD in Coyle from Syracuse. So that's the part of it that, and it does feel very Iowa-like.
Yeah.
We're just going to give it to Getz. I want to see this be a true search.
And it should.
Yeah.
And it should. Like, here's the thing, though. When they hired Beth Getz, and again, this is maybe my tinfoil hat conspiracy.
Okay, we like those, yeah.
It was kind of assumed that she was going to be the next AD.
Absolutely.
Now, look, I don't know how extensive the process was to hire kind of her replacement, you know, when she ended up taking over. But I would tell people this is not Gary Barta hire. It kind of infuriates me that people think that Gary Barta is this like, and look, Gary Barta has a lot of flaws. Let's like I said, he never wanted to compete with the Swarm in terms of donations.
Yeah.
He's been an outstanding fundraiser. That part is undeniable. But the reason why I never reached out to NIL and Brad was because he didn't want to have to compete with you donate versus the athletic department of the Swarm, when ultimately they need to complement one another. They're on the same team. And Beth has obviously done a number of good things when she was at Ball State, transitioning to Iowa. She's done, built relationships. The other thing is, though, too, if she starts August 1st when Gary's retired, right?
Mm-hmm.
If she goes through an entire football season, builds relationships to the board, builds relationship with Barbara Wilson, Iowa goes to a Big Ten championship in football, and she does everything right, especially from a PR perspective, how are you going to be able to have her do all the right things and not get the job unless you have a top 10 to top 12 sitting AD willing to leave a prominent, I'll say organization, a prominent university to go to Iowa? And I think Iowa people don't realize like how prominent the Iowa athletic job is. It's very highly coveted.
It is.
Very revenue-based. Diehard fan base that's not just football, especially with women's basketball.
But not overbearing.
And everything. Yeah, exactly.
We're not talking Auburn. We're not talking
not
a place
Bama.
that's going to run you out after one bad season. Stability coupled with the things you
exactly. It's like they'll be highly, I won't say highly respected. I mean, look at but it's you have a little bit more. You have a lot more wiggle room, right? Yeah. I mean, like it's a very loyal fan base. It's a very loyal university.
Kept his job through all this,
and they care about consistency more than anything else.
Yes.
I mean, again. That's why the next athletic director, you already mentioned it, with the job changes. That's why it's the most important hire in school history, in athletic department history. So it's going to be interesting, and I think it's irresponsible for Iowa not to explore outside candidates. But if you're going to hire somebody over Beth Getz, if she does everything right, you better damn well sure you have the right person.
Because she's going to get a job in a minute.
Absolutely. No question. Because she was a finalist for the Wisconsin athletic director job. She was like the executive of the year in women's college basketball when she was on that committee. Like, again, I kind of hate, I know people hate like the family feel of Iowa, the in-house hires, and that's understandably so given what's happening with the football program.
Yeah.
This is not one of those. And I would always push back on people about it. So it's a very exciting time, I think, for Iowa athletics in a lot of ways. But for a university that's so used to consistency and stability, Iowa fans are going to be very uncomfortable over the next 5 to 10 years while they hire these replacements.
So I remember when Bump Elliott hung it up. I'm older than you, but I know you don't remember Bump as an AD. I remember when Bowlesby left and the concern about that. And I understand the same trepidation that is there right there. But it ultimately comes down to the Board of Regents will have input and President Wilson will have input. I don't feel like, at least because I look at things athletics only, and I'm also based here in Des Moines.
Yeah,
I went to school at Iowa, but I don't care about the academic stuff anymore. I just don't. You live in Iowa City. You read the stories about what's happening, not just sports wise, but across the university. So what do we know about her? What do we, as it pertains to sports? Because it feels like she is very behind closed doors. At least that's the perspective that I get.
No, I would agree. I think she's done a good job of making herself known to the right people. And I think that's what's most important. I think she'll do a very good job with fans when she's given the platform. I don't think she's had the platform or the opportunity to do so.
Okay.
And when you're new to a place, keep in mind, like I think she played soccer somewhere in Kansas or Missouri, I want to say. I wish I could remember the university off the top of my head. But she was an All-American soccer player. She's a coach. This is a well-traveled season veteran, but up-and-comer in terms of college administration. And I can tell you from sources talking to people, and I've said this on my board, I've said in my podcast, so I'll say it here, talking to people within the athletic department, within the realm of Iowa athletes, even the families of Iowa athletes, they are thrilled about this. Like Beth has done all the right things behind the scenes and forged those right relationships. Now you can do all that, but is the execution going to be there? Because this is one of, again, I hate trying to speak in hyperbole or trying to over-bloviate things. This is one of the most important football seasons in the Kirk Ferentz era.
It is.
Without Brian, I mean, say whatever you want, Brian Ferentz. We could go do a whole other 3 podcasts on that alone.
We've said plenty, right?
But, they've done the nice job in terms of replacing the talent.
Oh, yes.
Or upgrading the talent, I should say. So they've done all the right things there. But for Kirk, not even just the Brian Ferentz aspect aside, you think about NILs continuing to take an impact, the transfer portal. USC, UCLA are joining next season. This is the last year of divisional play. And I've said it, Iowa fans should expect a Big Ten West title.
Oh, yeah.
I know a lot of people are in Wisconsin. I don't buy stock into it quite yet because
I don't get it.
You're going to take that Wisconsin, the way they played, and transform it into an air raid offense. You know what? I covered Scott Frost. And look, Luke Fickell is much more accomplished than Scott Frost ever was. The UCF national title was one of the biggest jokes in NCAA history. I don't want to hear it. I know it's a meme. It's ridiculous. But I was in that press conference with Scott Frost, and he said, the Big Ten's get changed for us. And I knew right then he was not going to last more than 3 or 4 years. He was going to get fired. Luke Fickell is much more accomplished. He's been to a college football playoff, et cetera. But you're not coming to the Big Ten, and you're not going to be able to change an offensive style of Wisconsin to fit what you want to do and what you did at Cincinnati. And you look at Iowa defensively, look at the personnel they have, and it's their schedule.
Yeah.
Iowa fans should expect 10 wins this season. I think anything other than that, not going to Indianapolis for Big Ten title, I think it's a failure of a season.
Penn State, they'll be a dog. FanDuel, I know, had the number out a while ago. I don't know if it's still up, but
was it double digits?
It was either 7.5 or 10.5. I can't remember which one.
I think it was. If it was 10.5, I'm not a financial advisor or a gambling guy, but I might hop on that. I would hop on the 10.5.
And Wisconsin, I would guess, if they put out a preseason line for that, probably Badgers by 3, just because it's at Wisconsin.
At Wisconsin, yeah. That's probably about right.
They're going to be favored in every other game, though.
I bet Nebraska's favored.
By the end of the year?
No, but I don't know. They still buy stock in Nebraska.
Preseason line, perhaps.
By
the time we get to November.
You're saying you think about the West.
Yeah.
Like Purdue, first-year coach. Illinois, first-year coach. Wisconsin, first-year coach.
Illinois lost their DC.
Yeah.
Minnesota's
Walter,
got
the new Purdue guy. Minnesota, I don't buy stock in Minnesota.
Plus, that's what Fleck. He's an idiot.
He has his moments. He rows the boat. It sinks about halfway through the year, but it does all right.
Kirk's got his.
Mohamed Ibrahim's gone.
Yeah,
and that dude was unbelievable. Here's the thing about Iowa fans. I think college football fans, sometimes you have to tip your cap. Mo Ibrahim did against Iowa. You just have even the most die-hard Iowa fans are tipping their cap, saying, "Man, I can't believe after all you went through, you're still going 40 times a game for 230."
Right.
Like the Saquon Barkley game, the Trace McSorley punt kind of soured a lot of feelings, but you tip your hat to Saquon Barkley for the performance. Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah,
I know. Sorry,
that was a tough one too.
But no, like I said, you look at the Big Ten West, the first year coaches, the transition, Iowa schedule, and who they've upgraded and who they have. There should be pressure on Iowa football to make a Big Ten title game this year.
All right, one more thing for you, Eickholt, and that's basketball.
Yep.
And this Grant Nelson thing. Now, as Iowa fans, we get excited to have our heart broken, but is this a real thing? Does Iowa really have a chance to get where the Athletic has him ranked as the number 3 transfer portal? Not that is available right now.
Like
that
overall,
is entered the portal. I've seen him. ESPN had him at number 4. Like, this is a huge addition. Is this real that Iowa's got a chance?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was a little bit surprising to me when I first got word of it and the intel coming in. But once he withdrew from the NBA draft, I think people need to realize he's a native North Dakotan. So I think the geography helps. The last, the 5 I think you look at the last 5 years, the leading scorer has been the position that Grant Nelson would play.
Yeah.
And if you go in Iowa, and Grant Nelson, there's a couple things the NBA wants him to work on. But if he goes to Iowa, drops 21 and 9 a night, he's going first round.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And you look at what Iowa's ceiling is next year and what Frank can sell him on player development wise, and who I've been told, Iowa has a real shot. I would place it at 25 to 30% right now. I think if he makes a visit to Iowa, I think it's a coin flip. Baylor, Alabama are still to make. Alabama, he has a visit lined up right now when we're recording this podcast. He has a visit lined up to Alabama. Baylor is going to be a favorite, I think, as well. But it's going to be very, very interesting to kind of see what happens with them. And I think Iowa has a lot of really good things going for it. I think they can compete, maybe even on the NIL front, maybe not as much as in Alabama.
Yeah.
But I would also throw in this fact. Iowa might be benefiting from the fact that he entered the portal because he's so focused on the NBA draft. He didn't really listen to schools before then. A lot of the schools that would probably throw the boat at him are full on scholarships now.
Absolutely. Or they've already filled that position.
And he's like, I'm not getting any PT here.
Right,
and this is a guy who has 1 year of eligibility who's one of the most productive players in the country. And I know people would say, well, Philip or Bracha need a year transition. And I like Philip. Philip's a great dude. He was this is a different phenomenal players, especially his second year. But this is not one. This is a guy you plug and play. Iowa is an NCAA tournament team to get Grant Nelson.
Like Bracha, if I remember correctly, he was rated like a 60 to 80 kind of
probably
transfer, in that range.
And in my opinion, he was playing out of position too. He's an undersized 5 going up against Zach Edey, and Zach Edey going to Purdue is a completely man. Especially if you watch the film of him hitting threes and those NBA workouts, it's ridiculous.
And those guards are now sophomores. And
that was the biggest flaw about them last year, and they still had a lot of talent. But that's why, I told you.
I never bought in.
I think you and I both talked about. I think Ken kind of pushed back on us a little bit. But you and I were like,
he had a bunch
of
freshman guards. That was a problem.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're a bunch of freshman guards. I'm like, freshman guards don't carry you in tourney time.
They don't.
And that's why we've said if Tony Perkins is consistent and Iowa gets to a tournament.
It's crazy that
he's a guard.
You add Nelson. You go from a team, I think 500 is kind of what I see this group right now, this roster. You add Grant Nelson, though, I believe. And I saw Bart Torvik. I talked about this on the podcast last week. It's a analytic based site like Ken Pom, but goes a little deeper.
Yep.
And Torvik, you can add guys to rosters and it'll spit out what the projections are. Iowa jumps up defensively like 50 spots.
Oh, it's nuts.
Which they need.
Yeah.
And I think it was 12 spots. They jump up in the national rankings. He's a lot higher than I am. At least his numbers are coming into the season on this Iowa team. And they're like you said, they're an NCAA tournament team. And then Fran will have 9 tournament teams in 11 years. Lute Olson never did that. Dr. Tom never did that. We have not seen this happen. Now, I know college basketball's evolved and changed. But Iowa basketball has not had that happen. Let's make this happen, all right? And that means drinking some Swarm beer, getting some more money into the collective, right?
Here's the thing, too, and it goes back to what you and I talked about regarding Fran. If Fran makes one Sweet 16, how highly regarded is he at Iowa right now? Yeah. He's different. He's king of it, right?
If he would have made it 2 years ago, the year they lost to Richmond.
Yeah,
that was the one.
There's a couple of what ifs, I would say, too, like the Oregon we talked about off air. There's all what ifs. I think Fran, when it's ultimately said and done, Fran needs a Sweet 16 to solidify his legacy. But I also think people are going to look back and say, you know what, Fran did a lot of things a lot better than people gave him credit for. But again, it's because Iowa fans are so desperate to craving to get back. I don't want to say to relevancy because I think they're a very relevant program with the player awards and everything. They need that team success to really, really solidify everything.
No doubt about it. David Eickholt here at Exile. Well, we got to have another beer and watch a little Iowa baseball. And
let's do it.
Like that, we got to wrap things up.
Thanks
as always.
Hey, man, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing some handsomeness here to the airwaves on YouTube and joining us here on the audio side as well. Thanks as always for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.